into the stretch, and American Pharoah makes his run for glory as they come into the final furlong. Frosted is second with 1/8 of a mile to go. American Pharoah's got a 2-length lead. Frosted is all out at the 16th pole. And here it is. The 37-year wait is over. American Pharoah is finally the one. American Pharoah has won the Triple Crown.
Welcome to the Paddock Pass with Brian Mariano on 104.5 The Team.
104.5 The Team, 104.5theteam.com. Welcome to the Belmont Paddock Pass, and I'm joined by the Capital Region Insider, Brady Farkas.
What's up, Bri?
What's going on, man?
I'm ready to talk horses, which I rarely do, but I'm ready.
Oh, we're ready. And we got producer Tom Gozlowski joining the show, man.
Thank you for having me back.
Sound a little more excited, okay? This is my first appearance on the Paddock Pass, guys, and I'd like you to be a little more upbeat.
I've been here and done that. It's another day of the life. I'm trying to cash in. I don't have a nice stack of green in my wallet yet. Maybe later on this weekend I'll be more excited.
Oh, the losing picks of Tom Gozlowski. But moving on here, NYRA and Fox Sports signing a huge deal for Saratoga. They're going to cover at least 2 hours of every day at the Saratoga meet. Now, in my opinion, as a horse player, I'm not really sure that this is that big of a deal. I'm not sure it's going to really bring in a lot of new viewers. Brady, what's your thought on that?
Oh, I think it's a big deal because I think you're missing the boat because you're so deep into racing. Mm-hmm. So you have other go-to places you would go to watch coverage. You would go to TVG or the OTB channel, which are specifically dedicated to horse racing all the time.
Yep.
Now, the diehard knows about those places. The novice doesn't, okay? The novice is flipping through the channels and is going through, the sports channels on Time Warner, and then all of a sudden you see Fox Sports 2 and you plop down on it, and there now you're into it. You just kind of stumble upon it. I think it's a big deal for the novice fan because the diehard, they're not going for. The diehard's going to go somewhere else already like you do, but for the novice who's just flipping through the dial, you're much more likely to land on it. I think it is a big deal.
I guess I was a little disappointed because when I came in and talked to you about it, I was fired up because I thought it was going to be every race. I thought it was going to be a live feed every single day, and I was going nuts. I'm like, this is great. This is going to be awesome. And then you told me it was only just a couple hours. I was like, ugh. Because I want to see every race because maybe people just can't have an opportunity to flip on a certain channel. Now with all the things on your phone, Fox Sports is a great app. You can always throw it on there. Fox Sports 2, to me, is still trying to find an identity. Now, Fox Sports 1, we know the changes that they're going through with their programming, but Fox Sports 2, I couldn't name anything on their program. A lot of things have been canceled so far. So if you're just bringing over a percentage of sports fans that may have never watched Fox Sports 2 before, maybe they have to at least order it and now have the access to it. That's big for that station going forward. I just wished it was more, maybe just because I'm a horse racing fan.
Well, that's the other thing, guys. You just said it there. TVG, you have to order. You have to buy as part of your Time Warner package. FS2, you don't. So therefore, it's easily accessible. Again, the diehard knows that TVG exists. The average fan doesn't. The average fan is not paying for TVG. The average fan stumbles on to Fox Sports 2 and sees it. And Brian, we were talking about it earlier in the week. I kind of equate it to the NHL. Okay, the diehard knows the Stanley Cup Finals are on NBC Sports Network. The average fan doesn't know that NBC Sports Network even exists. But last night you go watch Sharks and Penguins, and it's on NBC, then you stumble onto it, and now a non-diehard hockey fan is watching the Stanley Cup Finals because it's on a channel that they're more easily accessible, they're more likely to go to.
But the question then is, you say it's more accessible, easier to find, but when I'm flipping through the channels, I can flip through and NBC Sports Network's channel 44. Am I going to go all the way to channel 401 to find this if I'm just a novice person? It's almost like if it's 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, I might be flipping through. I'm not going to go all the way to channel 400 to find this.
But in the 300s and the low fours is your sports channels on Time Warner. So you're assuming then, okay, the novice racing fan is still a sports fan. So the sports fan is likely to be around those channels starting at 300 and ending at 400 and just see what's on. And therefore, again, I'm not going to go to TVG because number one, I didn't know it existed until you told me about it. And number two, I'm not going to pay for it, but I will go on all the channels in the 300s and 400s that I do get and see what's there because the sports fan is already using those channels.
It's also interesting to see how they promote it locally. Now, let's say, for instance, you have a Fox Sports affiliate and hey, Saratoga is going to be a huge deal here in the capital region. Let's buy some commercials for regular Fox for some local time to promote, hey, look, coming up on Fox Sports 2 on this day, this time. So you can bring over those, as Brady was kind of talking about, those listeners or watchers or all the people that maybe have a certain way to follow Saratoga racing. Now they have the new way that, it's on Fox Sports 2. Cool, I'll check this out. It's also down to how they're going to promote this. And also nationally on the Fox Sports 2 channel. Are they going to run promos throughout the day where maybe you bring in that casual novice racing fan and they'll start watching?
Well, my question is going to be, the whole reason they're trying to do this, in my opinion, is to promote NYRA Bets, their new betting platform to push throughout the entire country, not only in New York. Again, you find a national network like Fox, who's, made huge strides in the last few years, grabbing, U.S. Open golf and really pushing, their old brands that they had with the NFL football. My question really becomes, is Fox Sports really going to push this enough to get the casual fan? And I think that's where you were going there, guys, because normally, at least from what I've read, all they're going to do is grab the same NYRA feed that you would get on, OTB. Now, granted, to your point, Brady, if you're the novice fan, we were just talking off the air. You don't even know what channel OTB is. I do, knowing that I'm a diehard fan. But I don't know if it's really going to come down to I'm going to go and seek this out just because I want to get the same live feed that I could get on the computer or on another network just because it's Fox Sports.
If I tell you that there's a baseball game on ESPN, or I tell you there's a baseball game on MLB Network, the diehard already knows what MLB Network is and where to find it. The novice baseball fan doesn't. The novice baseball fan stops at ESPN, stops on Fox to see a baseball game. And that's just what I equate this to, because if Fox Sports 2 is in the channel grouping that I already go to constantly, I'm much more likely to be engaged to it and to see it rather than having to go out of my way to A, pay for something else, and B, again, the diehard is going for that specific coverage. I'm going for just generalized sports viewing.
But you don't have to pay for this. You could do the same thing on the OTB network anyway. And I guess bringing in a big
$12.50 is up there by all the music stations.
True.
on Time Warner.
But remember, you're equating it to Major League Baseball. Would anyone have known what the Women's College World Series game was on the other night, even though it was on ESPN? Or would you know if it was on ESPNU? You're in the same group of channels. And it's a lower level type of thing because horse racing isn't in the public eye as much as baseball and football yet. But then again, because you're putting it on a national network, you're going to get a little more viewers. I'm not really so sure about that. But you make a good point that this is a big step for racing. I just don't know if they're going to bring in the viewers.
You make a great point, but you're wrong.
Yes.
That's basically what he's saying.
This is my show. You're wrong.
We'll see if I come back to the Paddock Pass then. I mean, what incentive do I have to come back then?
This is what you used to do when you and I used to host. Only bring on guests that would agree with you.
Yeah, but see, that was fun because it benefited me.
See, I'm taking the other way around because I produce those shows, so it's my show, and you're wrong.
And it's a lot more fun.
Exactly.
So, guys, you host the show or host the podcast, and then you can spin things to your narrative.
No, it would just be interns on mine. Just be yelling at them constantly.
Just another.
Which would be fun for me.
Yeah. Well, they could listen. We'll just bring a little camera around. It'll be a day in the life at 104.5 The Team. Good Lord. This is, of course, the Paddock Pass, joined by Brady Farkas, Capital Region Insider, and producer Tom Gozlowski. Guys, we're going to move on to the big race this weekend. I know, Brady, we're going to give a little bit of different look here since you're not a horse racing expert.
I like to put the monies down. I just generally don't win, so it's fine.
Right, well, we're gonna help you try and win this weekend. Of course, the Belmont Stakes. Exaggerator, the 9-5 morning line favorite. In my opinion, I'm going to look at this race very short on speed. I feel like that Gettysburg was added in just to add a little more pace to this race to bring in Creator and some of the late closers. Exaggerator will probably be a little bit closer up. My feeling is Destin right now, guys. You were on Destin beforehand at the Kentucky Derby and ran a pretty solid 6th. What's your opinion on this race?
I really like Destin, back to the first weekend in May when he ran in the Derby. I thought he was going to have a horse that could really maybe sneak in there with a try, possibly win it with a great price. I think Andy Serling agreed as well, but Destin started to fall off a little bit there at the end of the Kentucky Derby. Horses started to catch him. I think it ended up being a 6th-place finish, but he was 4th right there. Just didn't have enough at the end.
Yep.
I look at Exaggerator, and Exaggerator wins the Preakness, 2nd in the Kentucky Derby, looking to be the first horse since 1955 to go 2-1-1 in the Triple Crown races. But let us not forget, he has run great when the track was a little wet, a little sloppy. It did rain on Churchill Downs Day just for a little bit, but it was a downpour for that time, so the track got a little bit more wet. Nyquist did win the race. Rained all weekend long, it seemed like, in Baltimore. It benefited Exaggerator. Mm-hmm. This still has to be a weather situation. If this ends up being a dry track, an Exaggerator has to run on a dry track, will it look as dominant as this horse has looked before? It's the best horse in the field, but I think a horse like Cherry Wine or Sudden Breaking News, the 3 or the 4, could sneak in there. I'm looking at 3, 4, 11 right now as the try I really feel comfortable with.
Trifecta. Come on now. Paddock Pass calls for superfecta picks.
I love it.
Can we bet the 10-cent super
Absolutely,
at the Belmont?
you can.
So I'm going to bet the 10-cent super.
Here he comes.
The favorite doesn't do well at Belmont. So American Pharoah won it last year, but despite that, the favorite hadn't won since 2005 when it was a Fleet Alex.
Wow.
So we're going with in the superfecta. I'm going to box it because that way I don't have to give you the winner. So I'm going to go.
Yeah, there he is.
So I'm going to go. I'm going to go Destin and Exaggerator. Exaggerator won't win it. There's your bold prediction.
Wow.
But he will finish in the top 4. And then we're going with Creator, looking to erase the 13th spot in the Derby. Remember, Palace Malice 3 years ago captured the Belmont after finishing 11th in the Derby. So we're calling for another comeback. And just because I'm always seeking the soul, we're going Seeking the Soul. Wow. The 30-1. 10-cent super box.
Capital
240 on the
Region.
bet. Do it.
Capital Region insider Brady Farkas throwing down the horse racing knowledge. Who says you don't know what you're talking about? Come on now.
30-1 on the morning line. Seeking the Soul. It's a great name. Looking to sneak into the 4 spot. Looking to make me some cash.
I love it. I'm all over the Destin train. Honestly, if I really can't find myself any way to throw out Exaggerator, I think he's going to be around. So I will go on the superfecta train with you, Brady. I'm going to throw in Destin. I love both Todd Pletcher horses, so I'm going to have him. The number 5, Stradivari. Then I'm going to move a little bit further to the outside. I'll take the favorite Exaggerator. And then my long shot play, Brody's Cause.
Really?
Yes.
Brady's Cause.
Capital Region Brady's Cause. Nope. I honestly love the 12 Brody's Cause because I feel like if Gettysburg can get out and set a solid pace, Brody's Cause will sit off the pace. You like Cherry Wine for that reason. I'm going to go with Brody Cause because of the fact that he won the Bluegrass, and his move really will work here at Belmont Park. He can sit off the pace a little bit on those wide turns, and if all these horses can handle the 1.5 miles, he'll be flying late.
Let's talk a little bit about Cherry Wine just because what was it, 3 weeks ago now, the rivalry with Wolf and Levesque, this horse almost cost you your investing career, we'll call it here in horse racing.
No such thing. No.
Why no confidence here for Cherry Wine in this race?
I honestly feel the same way in this race that I did before the Preakness. I honestly feel like this horse can be played. I'm throwing him out of my super, but again, I would recommend if anybody is, going deeper in their supers than just 4 horses, I would recommend throwing him in because I think he can finish 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. I just don't see any scenario where this horse wins the race. And again, I said that on Levesque and Wolf 3 weeks ago. I'm going to stand by it right now. I still don't think this horse can win this race. He is the wise guy pick for a lot of people, just not for me.
Overall win. Is Exaggerator going to win this? When you take a long pause like that, it seems as if your confidence level in this horse is just...
Here's the thing. If I wasn't looking, price-wise, I would probably put him in there to win because I think he's got the right move for this track. I feel like he'll be closer to the pace, which will probably be set up. But again, price-wise, I have to go with Destin. I really think this horse is going to... If Gettysburg goes to the lead and sets 48 for the half, maybe 112 for the 3/4 mark, Destin's going to sit right off of him. And even though Castellanos never won a Belmont, I still feel confident he's the best rider in the world, and I'm going to go with Destin to win the Belmont Stakes on Saturday. I will be lucky enough to be in attendance for this race. I'll be live tweeting all day. That's at 1045 Mariano. Guys, you can be tweeting it all during this? Or?
I'm hoping to be, but I will be on site for the Turning Stone Casino and Resort for Showtime Boxing that same day. So the first fight starts at 6. Showtime's telecast starts at 7. So I might have to miss the first fights. I might have to go watch the Belmont in the room, make sure I cash
at
in.
a casino,
and then
course.
Later on that night, hopefully celebrate some winnings and some green in the pocket after the race.
And then you can bring that green in the pocket to buy lunch for me and Mariano.
Oh,
I already did.
I like it.
I did it earlier this week.
Oh, I don't know about that. Listen. I don't remember that day. I don't think I was here for that.
The pizza's still in there. The box. Oh, somebody moved it now.
There's no such thing.
I didn't get any pizza, guys.
Oh my!
I don't know what this pizza is.
Did your interns take it?
I remember 4 slices of cheese and a pepperoni ended up in the studio yesterday.
Listen, I'm a buffalo chicken guy, so obviously it wasn't me.
Yeah.
So
I think you gave it to the interns.
I think so too.
That's what I think.
All right, guys, I'm going to kick you out of here and get the real experts in. I appreciate you joining the show. Brady Farkas, Tom Gozlowski giving you their insights for this weekend's Belmont Stakes. 104.5 The Team, 104.5theteam.com. Joined on the phone from Belmont Park by NYRA handicapping expert Andy Serling. Andy, this year's Belmont Stakes is race 11 on this wonderful card. And now, in my opinion, this is the best card besides Breeders' Cup Saturday. What's your opinion on that?
No, I agree. It's a sensational card. It came together extremely well. I mean, there's some very, very tough races, very competitive races. Obviously, it's got some star power besides the Belmont Stakes with the Manhattan, where you've got Flintshear running, who's a world-class horse. It's just an incredible day of racing.
The Grade 1 Acorn is the clash of the Oaks winner, Catherine Sophia, and the Black-Eyed Susan winner, Go Maggie Go. And, of course, this starts the $250,000 guaranteed pick 3. If I'm starting my pick 3, is this a match race between these two? And if it is, who wins it?
I don't like to say it's a match race because obviously Go Maggie Go has the talent to be somewhere in there. But I agree that Karina Mia and Catherine Sophia are the two horses you want in this race. I actually prefer Karina Mia in here a little bit. I thought her last race was very, very good because she's a horse that primarily had been on the pace in all of her races. She kind of got bumped around at the start and taken out of position, and while she obviously was much better in the field, she showed a new dimension that despite that trouble, she buried the field with a move on the turn. I like that race, and I'm going to take a shot with her as more of a one-turn miler. Catherine Sophia is obviously very, very good and could easily win this race, but I do think it's between these two and slightly over Karina Mia, who will be a better price.
The Grade 1 Met Miles race 9, and it's right in the middle of the guaranteed pick 6 and the guaranteed pick 4. I'm planning on going deep in the races before and after that race. Do I feel confident singling Frosted in this race?
I don't know if you feel confident. Do you feel confident?
I feel pretty confident.
I feel confident booking your ticket if you're singling Frosted. I understand your thinking, and I'm obviously just teasing you, but I don't, Frosted's no superstar. Yeah, I realize that a lot of his races, he's run a lot of figs, a lot of triple-digit buyers, and he's a good horse, but he's meeting a field where there's some pretty good horses in here, coming off a layoff after being in Dubai, not running well in the World Cup. We don't absolutely know that he's really a miler, though I suspect he shouldn't have a problem in the distance. So I think he can win, but as the favorite in there, I don't think he's necessarily that much more likely to win than a lot of horses in here.
So now we move on to the Grade 1 Manhattan, which seems to be the Chad Brown show the past few years, and it looks like it might be again this year. He's got 4 in the race. Can you see any of them getting beat? Obviously, you mentioned Flintshire earlier, but I feel like I just have to take all 4 Chad Brown horses. What's your thoughts on that? I disagree. I think the Met Mile, is the one you're supposed to use more horses, and here I would primarily use Flintshire. I think in the whole sequence, the $1.5 million guaranteed sequence, that the best horse to single is Flintshire. He's better than these horses. If I used one of their horses, it would be another Chad Brown horse, would be Slumber. I don't like Wake Forest at all in here. Big Blue Kitten, I suppose, is an outside shot, but Flintshire is going to be very, very tough to beat. All right, Andy, I'm assuming I'm going to be alive in the pick 4 going into the Belmont Stakes. How deep do I have to go in this race, and who ultimately wins this race? I'm going to use 3 or 4, depending on how many tickets I play. I think you have to use Exaggerator. He's obviously the most accomplished horse. He seems to show up every time and run reasonably well. I'm just not convinced that taking a short price on him, 1.5 miles, is a great move. I like both the Todd's horses. I prefer Destin of the two because I think Gettysburg compromises Stradivari a bit, but I think both of Todd's horses are capable of winning this race. So I'm going to use Destin, Stradivari, Exaggerator, and maybe a little Governor Malibu. Andy Serling. You can follow him on Twitter at Andy Serling. Andy, I appreciate you giving me some time, man. I know it's busy. Good luck this weekend, and maybe we can meet up when I get down there. I look forward to seeing you, Brian. Stop by and say hi. 104.5 The Team, 104.5theteam.com. Joined live from Belmont Park by TVG horse racing analyst Todd Schrupp. Todd, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Brian, and New York brought out its best. I mean, the weather has been phenomenal this week, and it's going to hold up through Saturday. So, yeah, I'm in a great mood, and who wouldn't be? The end of the Triple Crown, whether or not there's a Triple Crown on the line, it's something at TVG and any horse racing fan you've been following since January. So this is almost a celebration of what the Triple Crown Trail has been like. So, yeah, I can't help but be in a good mood.
Well, you mentioned the Triple Crown. We're a year removed from American Pharoah being finally the one to end the 37-year Triple Crown drought. I was lucky enough to be there, but what was it like for you? I know you were there last year. What was your perspective like?
Well, look, after having been there for so many failed attempts or very close attempts, and I'll never forget walking away from Smarty Jones and a friend of mine who's been in horse racing as long as I have. We were walking out to the parking lot, dejected, along with a lot of Philadelphians who'd made the train trip over to New York for that day and were hometown backers of Smarty Jones. We were so dejected, and my friend looked at me and he said, if a horse is ever going to do this, he's got to be a really, really good horse. And it was at that moment I wondered if we'd ever see it in my lifetime. And so that's what made American Pharoah so remarkable. It was one of those snapshots in time that you'll never forget. I mean, quite honestly, from the time I watched my firstborn come into the world, American Pharoah winning the Triple Crown, those are moments you're actually going to remember on your deathbed. It was that emotional. People moved to tears who normally wouldn't cry. My most remarkable moment, though, from the American Pharoah run through the Triple Crown was actually the day after the Belmont Stakes. And a number of media were there at the barn where he was at, waiting for Bob Baffert. And on top of that, he was going to be leaving almost immediately to go to Churchill Downs before he made his way back to California and whatever the rest of the year would hold as far as his campaign. So we're all waiting outside the barn. Bob Baffert rolls up. And he walks into the barn, and he emerges with American Pharoah on the other side of the barn. And what happens on the backside with the media and trainers and horses is you go to an area where they'll usually let the horse graze, the trainer will hold the horse, and then you'll stay back behind a barrier. And there were barricades set up there. Media had to stay behind, and then you can ask Bob Baffert questions. So he's holding on a shank. American Pharoah, who's just won the Triple Crown, who looks like he could run again the very next day. In contrast to Frosted, who was second to him, we went by his stall, and he was knocked out and sleeping in a deep REM. But American Pharoah and Bob Baffert are standing outside there. Bob takes a few questions, and then all of a sudden he says, would you like to pet him? And he's talking to the entire media. So they take down the barricades, and all these grown media members who, and some of them are hardened and crusty, have been around racing for a long time, hard to impress, they rush the horse as if they're 10 and 12-year-old kids, and they immediately start petting him. And American Pharoah stands there perfectly. I mean, you can't rush any horse, a 10-claimer, the way that the media did, and he stood there, and he let everyone pet him. He let everyone take pictures. And so, of course, in a typical 21st century moment, I grabbed my iPhone, took a picture, and to be honest with you, I wish I had submitted it for a Eclipse Award. I think I would have had a chance. But I have this picture at home now, and it's American Pharoah literally staring right at me into my camera, Bob Baffert holding him, all these hands going up near him and not flinching at all. And Baffert would say he loves people. He just loves people. So as great as American Pharoah was on the racetrack, the one thing I'll always remember about him was his intelligence and the true personality that he had, and I've never seen a horse like that around people before in my time in racing. Last year was very, very special to those of us who follow the sport, and even those who are on the periphery. One other mention I wanted to make, and I know this is a long answer to your opening question, but I had a chance to sit down with the president and CEO of the New York Racing Association yesterday, Chris Kay. The Sports Business Journal gives out an award each year. It's to the best sporting event in America. So usually the Super Bowl is up as it was last year. Even a NASCAR event was up. But it's all significant sporting events. The Pacquiao-Mayweather fight was a finalist in the category. And for the first time in its history, the Belmont Stakes was up for best sporting event in 2015. They ended up winning. They beat out the Super Bowl. They beat out all these other significant events. And it wasn't just about what took place on the racetrack, but clearly American Pharoah's presence had a lot to do with it. It was also the event itself and what the New York Racing Association put together. And so Chris Kay took a lot of pride in that. He took a lot of pride in the show that they pulled off. And, there was some criticism about limiting the amount of tickets last year, but in the end, it worked out, and a lot of those people will come back because they had a really good experience. But yeah, it's hard not to feel the afterglow of what took place a year ago.
No, and Todd, I agree with you because I was there 2 years ago when California Chrome ran, and there was 110,000 people, and you felt the 110,000 people that were there. Them limiting to 90,000 was the best thing that Chris K could have done. And he's done a lot in his short time, on top of NYRA. And one of the things he's done is created a card that doesn't really depend on just if there's a Triple Crown horse running. Do you feel that this is one of the stronger cards in America, even comparable or maybe even better to a Breeders' Cup Day?
Ryan, you know your stuff because you're absolutely right. The problem with the approach to Belmont Day in the previous years is everyone just hoped there'd be a Triple Crown on the line and the event would make itself. If there wasn't, there was really nothing else put into it. Oh, well, we're at the mercy of no Triple Crown. But what Chris K and then Martin Panza, the director of racing, have done by moving the stake schedule and making the undercard as intriguing and as appealing to the horse player and even the casual sports fan as the Belmont Stakes itself is absolutely brilliant because Belmont Day is always going to matter. And you're absolutely right. If you did a list of just say top 5 racing days throughout the year, Belmont Day has now become one of those top 5. Kentucky Derby Day, Preakness Day, Breeders' Cup Day. You could probably even move it into the top 3. It is a phenomenal day of racing because of the way they have moved the stakes schedule. And Chris K pointed that out. He said they realized they had to make event days on the New York Racing Association calendar, and they've done that. They essentially have 4 significant days, but the most significant is Belmont Day. It was a stroke of brilliance.
Todd Schrupp, horse racing analyst for TVG. You can follow him on Twitter at ToddTVG. We'll move to this weekend, Todd, to this great card that we have in front of us. The Grade 1 Manhattan has 4 for local trainer Chad Brown, and he's won 3 of the last 4. Do you see him winning this race, or if not, is there anyone else that can actually compete with his 4 horses?
He could complete the superfecta. He's that loaded in there. Flintshire is a horse that comes to his barn, and I know he's been very excited about because Flintshire, first of all, was a solid horse over in Europe. He came to the United States last year at Saratoga and won the Sword Dancer, and Chad Brown really likes how this horse is trained under him. Starting with Flintshire as one of his entrants in there, I know he's always liked Slumber, but Flintshire is where it starts for him and where the race goes through. If there's going to be a horse not trained by Chad Brown, I can't even imagine not winning this race, but maybe just finishing second in here. You could maybe look to a horse like Grand Tito. I do think his distance, a mile and a quarter, a mile and 16th might be his best. I know he had a win at a mile and 3/8 and the McDermott down at Gulfstream Park, and it wasn't a pretty good time. That's an indication that maybe he could get the mile and a quarter. He's always had the pedigree by Candy Ride out of Golden Arches, who is a very good race mare in her own right. But Grand Tito literally is the only other horse with a chance in there, and I kind of waffle on him at a mile and a quarter. But yeah, Chad Brown has everyone up against it in the Manhattan for sure.
All right, Todd, we'll move on to the big race of the day, the Belmont Stakes, and that's had a history of higher paying outcomes as the average win payoff since 2000 has been $33. So if you have some long shots, who are they that we could possibly go to the window with on Saturday?
Well, I do think a lot of people, there's kind of these wise guy horses. Governor Malibu is 12-1 in the morning line. So on the basis of that morning line, I'll call this horse a long shot. But Governor Malibu is going to take some play. A lot of people saw this horse's effort in the Peter Pan. He, first of all, had run against a very good winner in there in the Peter Pan and almost ran him down, a horse with some pretty good early speed for Centennial Farms and James Jerkins. But Governor Malibu, I thought, showed he's an improving 3-year-old at the right time. He draws the rail. He did come from far back in the Peter Pan, but I think he can be a little bit more tactical than that. And at 12-1 in the morning line, he would qualify as an upset possibility for me and the Malibu. My overall are for me and the Belmont, and I believe, overall, Exaggerator is a vulnerable favorite in here at 9-5. And it's kind of astonishing when you take a look at the modern era of the Triple Crown. Exaggerator and Lanny, there were 20 horses that went into the starting gate in the Kentucky Derby. Only 2 of them, Exaggerator and Lanny, will ultimately compete in all 3 races of the Triple Crown. 5 other horses who were in the Kentucky Derby waited till the Belmont Stakes. So that's why you see these payoffs that you talked about, because the horses who have competed in all three are very few and far between. They sometimes come in accomplished and get well bet because they're well known. Exaggerator will get well bet, but I think he's vulnerable. One, he got the ideal setup in the Preakness, and two, he also got the type of racetrack that he likes with a sloppy racetrack. So I think you have some vulnerabilities with the 9-5 morning line favorite coming in, and I think you have some interesting possibilities with other horses who are improving 3-year-olds at the right time. And so if I had to point to a horse that would be a double-digit price, to me it would be Governor Malibu.
And like you mentioned, he's trying to become only the 5th horse to run second in the Derby and then win the Preakness and the Belmont. So, Todd, it's that time of the interview, man. Who's winning the 148th Belmont Stakes?
I think the race goes through Pletcher. Todd Pletcher has struggled on the Triple Crown Trail, but if everyone remembers the history correctly, the first Triple Crown race he won was the Belmont Stakes. But not only that, he did it with a filly, the first filly to win in over 100 years in the Belmont Stakes. It was kind of a quirky way to win it, and he had to beat Curlin. So Todd Pletcher knows what it takes to win the Belmont Stakes. It kind of got him started and having a little bit more success in the Triple Crown. He's got 2 horses in here, but the one I'm most intrigued with is Stradivari. Stradivari is a horse that you and I talked about before the Preakness. Maybe it was too much too soon. He didn't get the bestest trips from the outside post. I thought he'd be fine post 11 in a field of 11 that day. He wasn't. He was further back than he'd like to be, but he gets the perfect draw in the Belmont Stakes in the middle of the field because right next to him is Gettysburg. Gettysburg is in this race to essentially set the pace for his stablemate Creator. It's what we call in horse racing a rabbit. The 6th Gettysburg is going to be sent right away. That is the ideal situation for John Velasquez aboard Stradivari because all he has to do is set up a stalking position on Gettysburg. So look for Gettysburg to go to the lead, John Velasquez to stalk him in that 2nd or 3rd flight, and then coming out of the far turn, Stradivari gets the first jump. The question is whether or not he'll go on with it. When I saw him at Keeneland, he did go on with it at 1 1/8. I think the Preakness was a little bit of an aberration for him. I think he'll definitely improve out of that race. So Stradivari is my top pick in this race, the Belmont, and I'd give a long shot look at Governor Malibu.
Todd Schrupp, horse racing analyst for TVG. Again, you could follow him on Twitter at ToddTVG. Todd, I know you have a busy schedule, man. I really appreciate you giving us some time, man.
Hey, Brian, it's always good to talk to you, especially with someone as knowledgeable as you and who loves the sport as much as you, so anytime.